Society is normalizing financial suicide every single month.
The average person is financing their own obsolescence and smiling while doing it.
And the trap they are walking into next is entirely invisible. Look, today's deep dive is about exactly that. We are mapping the absolute architecture of this trap. No noise, no fluff, just the raw mechanics of how the rules of wealth accumulation have completely fractured.
Yeah, and the exact strategic blueprint you need to escape before the system snaps shut on you. Because, I mean, look at the sheer scale of the delusion happening around us right now. People wake up, they drive their heavily financed cars to a corporate office, and they genuinely believe they are making forward progress simply because they are moving.
But they aren't actually moving forward, are they? Like they are on a treadmill, and that treadmill is entirely powered by their own consumer debt. Worse, the speed of that treadmill just doubled in the last couple of years, and
And nobody realized the dial got turned up.
exactly.
It's the illusion of progress. Almost everyone you know has a massive car payment. It has become a normalized standard. They view a $700 or $800 monthly auto loan as a mandatory subscription fee for existing in modern society. They look left, they look right, and they think, well, my neighbors have this payment, my coworkers have it, so this must just be the cost of being alive.
Wait, I have to jump in here and play devil's advocate. Getting a reliable car to get to work, securing a 30-year mortgage, contributing to a retirement account. I mean, this is literally the exact formula financial advisors and parents have preached for 50 years. How is following that responsible advice suddenly financial suicide?
Because you were talking about an operating system that was built for 1995.
Yeah.
Running a 1995 financial operating system in an AI-driven economy is a guaranteed formula for poverty. It is not your fault. You did exactly what you were instructed to do. You followed the blueprint. But the fundamental math of the economy was quietly rewritten while you were busy working.
It's terrifying because people are doing what they were taught was responsible, but the math has completely turned against them. They use the herd as a psychological safety blanket. If everyone around you is making the exact same capital allocation errors, you don't feel the sting of the mistake immediately. Being broke is now considered normal.
Right.
But if normal means being one missed paycheck away from total collapse, why are people trying so hard to fit in?
Because normal feels safe. But it is an incredibly dangerous place to be right now. The emotional tension tearing people apart is real. They feel the ground shifting under their feet. They go to the grocery store and they know their bill is 30% higher. They sit in endless corporate meetings and secretly sense that their specific role feels significantly less secure than it did just 12 months ago.
And this is where it gets dangerous. Because despite feeling that anxiety, they refuse to change their capital allocation. They still prioritize the illusion of status. When you prioritize a depreciating liability, like a $60,000 truck, over acquiring actual leverage, you are making a choice. You might not realize it, but you are actively choosing to leave yourself entirely vulnerable to the future.
I see it constantly. People earning low to mid six figures who are completely trapped.
Yeah, I talk to these folks all the time. Someone earning $120,000 a year, which sounds fantastic on paper, but they have absolutely zero free cash flow. Nothing.
Because their lifestyle expands instantly to consume every single dollar they generate. They get a tiny raise, they upgrade the crossover SUV, they get a holiday bonus, they immediately book a luxury trip. There is zero margin for error. And they are completely blind to the fact that they're about to compete against machines that never sleep, never ask for a raise, and never complain about being tired.
Okay, so let's break down why the system is built this way. Because this trap isn't an accident. The entire consumer credit infrastructure was intentionally designed to keep people in this exact position, right?
Absolutely. Think about how debt used to be utilized by past generations. They used debt productively. They took out loans to build factories, to acquire arable land, to buy equipment that created production and generated a yield. Debt was a tool for leverage.
Right, and compare that to today. We have completely transitioned to consumptive debt. People are going into debt for Uber Eats deliveries, for fast fashion, for financing vacations they absolutely cannot afford.
And the banking system loves this transition. The institutions need you to remain highly leveraged and hyper-dependent on your biweekly paycheck. If you have a massive mortgage and two heavy car payments, you are entirely compliant. You cannot take risks. You cannot march into your manager's office on a Tuesday, quit, and start a disruptive company. You are a captive audience bound to the system just to service your liabilities.
The social contract used to be very straightforward. You take on some debt, you do your repetitive corporate job, and the corporation pays you enough to comfortably service that debt and buy your groceries. That was the unwritten deal.
That deal is dead. Artificial intelligence fundamentally broke that transaction. Corporations are waking up to a stark reality. They do not need to pay an employee $80,000 a year plus benefits to process spreadsheets, organize data sets, or write basic marketing copy. They can pay an API a fraction of a cent per prompt to do it instantly, flawlessly, and continuously.
And an AI doesn't have a mortgage to pay. An AI doesn't need comprehensive health insurance. It certainly doesn't need a financed luxury car to feel validated by its peers. Wait, cost of capital sounds technical. What does that actually mean for a normal person?
Simple. It just means the actual price you pay to use someone else's money to try and make your own. Imagine it like renting a bulldozer. If the rent is higher than the gold you dig up, you are digging your own grave.
Wow. And right now, the average person is renting that bulldozer to dig a swimming pool they can't even afford to fill. They aren't digging for gold, they're digging for aesthetics.
Precisely. The cost of capital has skyrocketed over the last few years. Interest rates are punishing anyone who carries a balance. Meanwhile, the cost of intelligence is dropping to absolute zero. This is the biggest structural divergence in human economic history. Intelligence used to be scarce and highly expensive. Now it is abundant and practically free. But capital, the actual money you need to operate, is suddenly scarce and expensive.
So if you are borrowing very expensive capital just to fund a lifestyle, while your primary asset, which is your human intelligence and your time, is being aggressively commoditized by cheap AI, you are mathematically getting crushed from both sides. Why aren't people sounding the alarm in their own lives? If the math is this obvious, why are they ignoring it?
Well, it comes down to a deeply ingrained psychological blind spot called normalcy bias. It is the fatal cognitive error of assuming that tomorrow will look exactly like yesterday. People look at the last 10 years, how they got promoted, how their specific industry functioned, and they blindly assume the next 10 years will follow the exact same trajectory.
It's the "it won't happen to me" syndrome.
Exactly. Consider a very typical scenario. Think of a guy named Rahul. Rahul is a senior copywriter at a mid-sized marketing agency. He makes $95,000 a year. He feels incredibly successful. So successful that he recently financed a brand new SUV for $800 a month and bought a house at the absolute top of the market with a $3,000 monthly mortgage.
Okay, so after taxes and all those heavy fixed costs, he probably has what, maybe $400 of actual disposable income left at the end of the month?
Right around there. And what does he do with it? He buys targeted products he sees on Instagram. He is buying little hits of dopamine to numb the low-level, constant stress of a demanding job that he subconsciously knows is fragile.
But Rahul probably thinks his job is entirely safe because he views himself as a creative. He tells himself that an algorithm could never replicate his human nuance, his specific brand of storytelling, or his cultural awareness.
And that is the exact moment his ego becomes his downfall. Rahul is confusing his personal ego with objective economic value. The market does not care about his ego. The market only cares about output. One afternoon, the agency owner looks at the balance sheet and realizes they can replace Rahul's entire six-person department with a finely tuned language model and one junior editor who simply manages the prompts.
So Rahul gets called into a 15-minute virtual meeting. Human resources on the call. The position is eliminated. The illusion shatters instantly. The income stream is violently turned off. But that $800 car payment and that $3,000 mortgage are still there. The liabilities do not care that you got replaced by code.
And the real tragedy is how Rahul is going to react to this shock. Because of his normalcy bias, he will immediately try to recreate his past. He will update his resume. He will go on job boards. He will desperately beg for the exact same position in an industry that has fundamentally and permanently downsized its human footprint.
Rahul trying to compete with AI by typing faster and working longer hours is like trying to win a Formula One race by pedaling a bicycle really hard. I mean, the problem isn't his work ethic. His work ethic is probably great. The problem is that he is in the wrong vehicle.
That is a perfect way to look at it. He is refusing to accept that his current highly specialized skills might have a half-life of only 18 months. Adapting is deeply uncomfortable. It requires admitting that what made you valuable yesterday is worthless today.
But even if Rahul keeps his job for another year, isn't he still making $95,000? That still
Yeah.
sounds like a lot of money to most people. Break down the actual mechanics of why that income is a trap.
Let's strip away the emotion and just look at the raw, objective numbers. Let's say someone earns $5,000 a month in gross income. You look at that number on your offer letter, and you feel like you have breathing room.
But you don't actually see $5,000.
Never. First, taxes immediately vaporize 25 to 30% of that capital. you were instantly down to roughly $3,500. Then you have the inflation drag.
Which is completely invisible. You don't see an inflation deduction on your pay stub.
No, but you feel it intensely at the grocery store, at the gas pump, and in your utility bills. Your purchasing power drops by another 7 to 10% quietly in the background. So before you have paid a single real bill, you are effectively working with about 52 cents on the dollar.
Now layer the debt servicing on top of that remaining 52 cents. That car payment, the minimum payments on the credit cards that got maxed out over the holidays just to maintain the illusion of middle-class success.
Exactly. Debt servicing eats another massive 20% chunk of your net income. You're violently bleeding capital just to stand in place. You have zero liquidity.
Which brings us to the devastating opportunity cost of that lifestyle. That $800 going to a depreciating piece of metal sitting in a driveway, that is the most expensive money you will ever spend in your life because it completely locks you out of the greatest wealth transfer in history. Wait, arbitrage sounds technical. What does that actually mean for a normal person?
Simple.
Okay.
It just means buying something cheap in one place and instantly selling it for more in another. Imagine it like buying water bottles for $1 at the supermarket and selling them for $5 at a music festival.
And right now, there is a massive arbitrage opportunity between what cheap AI can produce and what the legacy market is still willing to pay for that production. But you cannot capture that arbitrage if all your capital is entirely tied up in a 7-year loan for a crossover SUV.
You have zero liquidity to make the bet. Look at the two diverging futures here. The average person is playing a linear game. They trade 1 hour of time for 1 hour of money. There is a hard physical ceiling to this game. You only have 24 hours in a day, and your body will eventually break down.
Whereas the AI leveraged individual is playing an exponential game, they completely disconnect their income from their time. They build a system once, and that system executes 1,000 times while they sleep. This is not the worst part. The worst part is the severe bifurcation of society that this math creates. There is no middle class in the future of AI. The middle is falling out.
There are only two paths forward from this exact moment in history. Path 1 is staying stuck. You keep the car payment. You cling to the comfortable, repetitive job. You ignore all the warnings and tell yourself that AI is just a hype cycle, or that your specific industry is a special snowflake that won't be touched.
If you take path 1, your wages will stagnate because your output is easily replicated by someone using a basic prompt. Meanwhile, your debt becomes infinitely heavier as inflation remains sticky. You will eventually be managed entirely by an algorithm. You become a human API, taking orders from a machine to do the physical tasks it cannot yet perform, like moving boxes or delivering food.
Wait, algorithmic depreciation sounds technical. What does that actually mean for a normal person?
Simple. It just means your skills lose value automatically as machines learn to do them faster and cheaper. Imagine it like an hourglass where the sand falling isn't just time, it's your actual paycheck disappearing into a server farm.
Okay, so the hourglass is draining rapidly. We see the trap. We know the math is brutal. How do you immediately step off path 1 and onto path 2? What is the actual mechanical solution to escape? Path 2 requires radical adaptation. It starts with an aggressive, ruthless audit of your life. You must slash every single unnecessary liability that does not produce a yield. You sell the financed car if you have to. You downsize the lifestyle. You must free up cash flow immediately, and not to save it in a traditional bank account that loses to inflation, but to acquire leverage.
What happens next is where everything changes. We enter the era of the asymmetric bet. But it requires a complete software update to your brain. You have to stop acting like a consumer. The consumer looks at $1 and wonders what temporary feeling it can buy them today.
You must start acting like a holding company. A holding company looks at $1 and calculates how many more dollars it can capture over the next decade. You need to treat your personal finances as a corporate balance sheet. Every subscription, every payment, every daily habit must violently justify its return on investment. If it does not generate cash flow or expand your leverage, cut it.
Once someone has stabilized their cash flow and stopped the bleeding, they can't just sit on the cash. What does the actionable system actually look like? Give us the blueprint.
The blueprint is highly specific. You do not need to know how to write complex code. You need to identify a highly specific, painful problem in a very boring niche market. Take a local plumbing business, for example.
Great example. High friction, very physical.
Exactly. A local plumbing business misses 40% of their incoming calls because the plumber is physically under a sink. Every missed call goes to voicemail, the customer hangs up, and calls the next result on Google. That missed call is a lost $800 job. That is a massive friction point.
So instead of trading your time for an hourly wage, you step into that specific friction point.
You use AI to map that workflow. You build a simple, automated AI voice agent using no-code tools. It instantly answers those missed calls, talks to the customer naturally, and books the appointment directly into the plumber's calendar. You do the work to build the system once. Then you package that solution and you charge that plumbing business $500 a month for the output.
You are no longer selling your time. You are selling the output of your system. You are taking the absolute efficiency of the machine and arbitraging it against the glaring inefficiency of the local market.
And you can deploy that exact same system to 50 different plumbers across the country. Your costs remain relatively flat, but your revenue scales exponentially. This is what it means to transition from being a producer of labor to an allocator of machine intelligence.
But executing this requires incredible discipline. It requires you to completely ignore the social pressure to appear wealthy to people who are secretly broke. You have to let your neighbor think you are crazy for driving a 15-year-old reliable sedan while they show off their new finance truck. True wealth isn't a luxury badge on your steering wheel. That badge requires you to trade your actual life energy to maintain. True wealth is quiet. It is having a server running your business and generating revenue while you sleep.
You have to choose right now. You can be normal, heavily indebted, holding on to an outdated operating system and waiting to be replaced. Or you can choose to be weird, highly leveraged, and building a quiet empire from your laptop. Consider tonight when you close your eyes, will your money be sleeping with you? Or is the machine working the night shift to build your empire? The window to decide is closing right now.
Don't let the future leave you behind. Start earning.